It could be traumatic for the boy. Still, the Duke was determined to expose her lie. He wanted to see her continue pretending that her words and actions were sincere. Chester believed that it wasn't enough to simply brainwash a child. You also had to appear genuinely caring. The level of calculation involved astonished even him. "You're having trouble deciding," the Duke added. "You may stay here with him for the month." Lizelle was so surprised she had to ask him to repeat himself. The butler, too, thought he had misheard. She was given a room in the mansion. The boy was absolutely delighted. His room was spacious and beautiful. Lizelle admitted it was all very lovely. The butler told her that he had already informed her family that she would be staying with them, so she didn't need to worry. He introduced himself as Ran. Lizelle then asked if she could request a carriage for the next morning. She needed to return home briefly to pack her things and explain the situation to her parents in more detail. "Lapel doesn't like waking up alone," she added, "so I have to be back before he wakes up. That means I need to leave early." Ran promised to handle everything properly. Internally, however, he was skeptical. As Mr. Chester said, she really is a magnificent swindler. She's even keeping up the act in front of him. Ran believed she would fall for the luxury of the mansion and take the bait. After all, it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. He resolved to report her every move to his master. Still, the butler couldn't help but wonder why his master was so fixated on her. That night, Lizelle asked Lapel why he wasn't asleep yet. "The night sky is really beautiful," he said. "I want to have a star from it." Lizelle smiled. "We can't just take stars. We'd get caught." Lapel's face fell. "But I really want one." Feeling sorry for him, Lizelle decided to play along. "Well, I did catch a star," she said, holding out her empty hands. The boy's expression fell again. "There's nothing there." "Of course there is," she insisted. "All the stars in the world are in your eyes." Lapel's eyes lit up. "Really? I can see them, and there are stars in your eyes too." Her heart ached. "This little one, he's making me melt completely." She couldn't help but laugh. "Now that we've caught the stars," Lapel said, "let's sleep." Everything had gone wrong that day, but she still had to take care of the boy. In the morning she was so tired she fell asleep in the carriage. A sudden jolt from the carriage hitting a stone woke her up. She had gone home early that morning, exhausted. Convincing her father to let her leave for an entire month had been incredibly difficult. Still, she wanted to return quickly and rest properly. She told the coachman to stop for a moment and stepped out. "I'll be back soon," she said. As expected, the market was busy. There were stalls selling everything, from magic tools to food and trinkets. She guessed there must be decorations with stars too. Finally, she found it. Real stars may be mortal and out of reach, but this would do. She was certain Lapel would be thrilled. Then she spotted it. A beautiful glass ornament, shimmering like a captured star. He'll love this. But just as she was about to approach it, she ran into the Duke. The butler, Ran, was also surprised to see him. "We've already prepared the carriages, sir," he informed the Duke. "Then let's go," Chester replied curtly. Ran hesitated, then asked, "Are you sure you want to go there personally, sir?" "I'm just fulfilling someone's request," the Duke answered. Rand hoped this trip would be worth it, that the man really had useful information. Still, he knew the truth would only come out at a face-to-face meeting. Gretzky had also reminded the Duke to finish his business quickly. There was still a scheduled meeting with the elders. Rand sighed. Since the master would be passing through the market, he just hoped he wouldn't get distracted. Afterwards, the gentleman asked, "What about the woman and the child?" "The boy is sleeping, and the Ms. left early this morning to visit her house," Ran replied. Ran then snapped, "Stop indulging her, and stop buying those magic balls. We already have more than enough." Chester was running late. It was time to move. Rowan tried to get his attention, asking not to be ignored, but no one listened. Suddenly he remembered his brother's words, how his son loved stars. "I watch the night sky," his brother had once said, and he smiled with such sweetness. That smile could touch anyone's heart. Rowan had believed that one day his brother would be able to see that smile too. Chester had never thought those would be his brother's final words. He was probably still worrying about his son, even now. "Don't worry, Leon," Chester thought. "I'll take care of Lapel's happiness." But first, he had a few minor problems to deal with. He'd assumed Lizelle was still at home, but she appeared just then, saying she had finished her errands and had stopped by on her way back. Chester told her to take her hand off him and walk around as she pleased. Lizelle blinked, confused. She had touched him first. The saleswoman interrupted, praising their excellent taste. "This magic ball glows when you press the button. It's the last one. We've nearly sold out." Lizelle decided she had to get it for Lapel. "I touched it first," she said firmly. "We touched it at the same time," Chester argued. Thinking fast, Lizelle teased him, hinting at his fondness for collecting cute trinkets. He admitted it was a nice hobby. Just then, a child's voice piped up. "Mum, Dad, look! Auntie and Uncle are fighting over a toy." Lizelle had her pride, but she wasn't backing down now. She looked around and guessed the voice belonged to Ran. Taking advantage of Chester turning away, she quickly snatched the ball from his hands and told the shopkeeper she'd buy it. Chester was indignant, but the victory was hers. Lizelle thought it was a beautiful day. Chester observed how happy she looked. "It's just a toy," he thought. "She's not a child. Is she really happy over something so small?" He found himself doubting his assumptions. Could a woman obsessed with luxury find joy in something so simple? But he almost believed her act. Lizelle called to him, telling him to hurry up. Even her innocent smile, he told himself, was part of the deception. "I'm coming," Chester said coldly. She thought he was rude and turned away. Suddenly, shouts rang out. People were warning her to move. She didn't even have time to finish her thought before she noticed a carriage speeding straight toward her. A crowd gathered. The coachman apologized. The horses had gone wild. People asked if she was okay. "I'm alive," Lizelle said dazedly. Chester's voice came from beneath her. "If you're alive, could you please get off me?" She realized that when she'd turned around, he had stepped in front of her, and she had fallen onto him. Thanks to him, she wasn't injured. She thanked him and joked, "I must be heavy." "It's good we weren't hurt," was all the Duke said. Chester approached the man whose carriage had caused the chaos. "You dropped these boxes. They look heavy. I'll help." Lizelle watched. "He's definitely not the man of my dreams, but he seems like a good person." Noticing a cut on her hand, likely from the fall, she went over and mentioned that his hand was injured too. Chester turned away. "It's none of your business." Lizelle felt like a fool for thinking well of him. "He's nothing like me. He's not honest. But he did help people, and maybe that counted for something." She continued her shopping, buying the magic ball and a few other small gifts for Lapel. In the end, she had 2 boxes full. She felt satisfied. "We didn't buy anything for Lapel, and he's the one who invited us as guests," she mused. "If the Duke doesn't mind spending money, why shouldn't we get him something nice?" Back in the carriage, she thought maybe she should have gone into an expensive shop just to empty the Duke's wallet a bit more. The carriage suddenly stopped. Curious, she asked the coachman what happened. Basin's carriage broke down. A wheel came off. "They can't go further." "Lady Frozen is heading to the Hertz mansion," he added. "You'll be travelling together." Lizelle sighed. Should I even try to talk to someone so rude? She asked the Duke if he wanted to ride with her. He replied calmly, "Go ahead, I'll wait here." "Just as I thought," she muttered, saying goodbye. But the servant stopped her. "Please wait." The servant again asked the Duke to ride with the lady. Chester finally agreed, remembering the nobleman's words. He had to return quickly for a meeting. Lizelle had said she needed to get back before Lapel woke up. There wasn't time to waste. They rode together, both clearly unhappy. The carriage was crowded, so they sat opposite each other. With every bump, their bodies touched. Lizelle nearly suffocated and was baffled by his long legs taking up all the space. Each jolt made the situation worse. Chester tried folding his legs, but that only made his knee bounce more. Lizelle didn't understand why he didn't sit like before. She had no space left. Chester, annoyed by her pushing his legs, thought, "At least I'm trying to think of her comfort. She only thinks about herself." She wanted him to sit properly again. She's such a cheater, he thought. The carriage turned suddenly, and Lizelle began to fall. She was furious. But Chester wasn't even paying attention. He was staring out the window. Of course, she thought, short legs, I'll just have to endure it. She wanted to sleep, but found it impossible. Eventually, though, she lay down and managed to fall asleep. Chester was shocked. She's actually sleeping, after everything. He looked at her sleeping face. At times like this, she looks like an innocent child. Then his mind drifted somewhere he didn't want it to go. He quickly composed himself. I know better than anyone that you can't judge someone by their appearance or their clothes. He remembered being beaten once for interrupting a nobleman. His brother defended him, saying Chester was still a child. But their father had snapped. Leon, don't interfere. A father should love his child more than anyone, but he acted like a cruel bastard, Chester recalled bitterly. That's why you should never jump to conclusions about people. Meanwhile, the lady was still sleeping, and the gentleman had started to suspect that she was only pretending. But then, quite suddenly, she fell headfirst against the carriage window with a loud thud. Chester was shocked. How had she not felt that? The impact had been loud enough to make him wince. They had hit a rocky stretch in the road, and he was beginning to worry she might be tossed around the carriage. Acting on instinct, he reached out to catch her head before it could hit anything again, telling himself it was just a reflex. To his surprise, she clung to his hand and murmured, "Mummy," in her sleep. Chester blinked, bewildered. What kind of strange woman is this, he thought. She's completely eccentric, nothing more. Meanwhile, back at the estate, the servants were struggling to calm Lapel. The boy was crying, calling for Lizelle in distress. One of the maids knelt beside him, gently explaining that she would return soon. Just then the butler arrived and asked what was going on. The maid quickly reported, "He didn't see Miss Lizelle when he woke up, sir. We told him she would be back soon, but he's inconsolable." The butler was surprised. It seemed the child had already made several loops around the living room in search of her. The staff apologized, saying they were quite busy at the moment but would give a full report later. Ran, observing from nearby, joked, "I believed in them. That's why she promised to come back before he woke up." Peering out the window, he noticed a carriage arriving. His face lit up. She's back. The boy will calm down now. Inside the carriage, the Duke was still holding Lizelle's head, trying not to draw attention. The moment the butler opened the carriage doors, Chester quickly let go and shifted to look out the window. Ran stared at the scene, confused. "What happened to your carriage? Why are you two returning together?" Chester replied calmly, "The wheel broke. We hit some rocks and had to come back together." Just then, Lizelle stepped out of the carriage, looking dazed and rubbing her head. "I'm fine," she said with a groan. "Probably just bumped around a few times while I was sleeping." The Duke raised an eyebrow. "You were fine when you hit your head, but the moment you wake up, suddenly everything hurts?" He decided it was best to ignore this insidious woman until the potion arrived. As he stepped inside, the master of the house was taken aback to see Lapel running frantically, the servants chasing after him. Lizelle was taken aback when she saw the boy immediately rush into her arms. Lapel began to cry, accusing her of being cruel and expressing that he didn't understand why she had left him alone. Lizelle's heart ached for him. The butler observed how deeply attached the boy was to his mistress. But the gentleman, Chester, reminded him not to let his guard down until they had all the facts. If anyone noticed anything suspicious, they were to report it immediately. As the boy clung to Lizelle, the servant suggested that she leave her luggage behind, but Lizelle insisted on handling it herself. She was exhausted and longed to rest, but first she needed to calm the boy down. Lizelle approached him and asked why he was crying when she was there. Lapel sat sobbing, pleading with her not to abandon him. Lizelle, perplexed, explained that she hadn't left him, she had just been away on business. The boy kept repeating that if she left him again, he would be alone. He then mentioned having to return to the dump, which made Lizelle feel ashamed. She hugged him tightly, reassuring him that she would never, ever leave him alone. Lapel asked if she was being sincere, and Lizelle promised that she was. She then asked him to wait for a moment while she went to the gifts. Lizelle told Lapel that if she were leaving, she wouldn't have bothered to buy him a present. She asked him to hold the magic ball for now, and closed the curtains. The boy was confused, especially as the room was growing darker. Lizelle wanted to show him something special. She asked Lapel to watch carefully as she pressed a button on the ball. Instantly, the ball began to sparkle, and the room filled with twinkling stars. "These are real stars," Lizelle said. The boy was mesmerized, his face lighting up in awe. "These are your stars now, Lapel," she continued. "This is your home, and no one will ever drive you away." The boy, overjoyed, pressed himself against her. Though they would part soon, Lizelle wanted to keep this promise to him. Yet, deep down, she knew she couldn't keep it forever, and that made her feel guilty. Meanwhile, the woman who had taken the boy was now in the Duke's mansion. The masked man asked if they were sure it was the same boy. The servants confirmed that he had black hair and red eyes. The woman, they noted, was the Baron's daughter. The masked man froze. "Is this the vain girl we've been talking about?" he asked. He then turned to the servants and sighed. "Is that all you've found out? You've had all this time and this is what you've come up with? I could have learned more from gossip." Furious, he quickly called Hazen and ordered him to dispose of the trash. The servants begged for mercy, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. Hazen asked what the plan was now, and the gentleman responded, "We'll start with the magic sphere." Ran, looking on, noted, "From what we've learned, the accident wasn't an accident at all. The target was Leon himself." Chester slammed his hand on the table in frustration. "Who would dare do such a thing?" He then asked about the list of suspects. The butler explained that there were too many enemies within the family, making it difficult to narrow it down. "It would help if we had testimony from the only surviving witness, Lapel," he added. The butler had no idea where his master was headed, but Chester said he needed to see the Knight's commander. Ran was surprised. "You're going, personally?" he asked, before requesting that Chester wait in case he needed to be called. The gentleman, however, said he wanted to get some fresh air and asked the butler to bring Warden. "Maybe someone holds a grudge against me, but I don't remember having any enemies," Chester mused. "I need to find the culprit and learn the truth." As Chester passed by the servants, he overheard one of the maids asking another if she was afraid of the Duke. "They say he might have killed his older brother to take the title," she whispered, shuddering at the thought. "It's a terrifying possibility." Another maid scolded them, warning, "Keep quiet, the walls have ears." The conversation shifted to the assumption that Chester had killed his brother for the title of Duke. "Killing your own brother for power is a mockery of family," one of them said. "He needs a scapegoat to clear his name of this fratricide." The Knight Commander noticed Chester's arrival and immediately assumed something had happened. Chester ordered him to assemble a reconnaissance team of the best knights. When the commander asked what they should be looking for, Chester silently handed him a piece of paper. The commander read it, disbelief evident on his face. "Is this true?" he asked. Chester nodded, and the knight agreed to carry out the task. "Take Warden with you," Chester added. "I need her help on this." The gentleman then told the butler he could leave. "I need to be alone for a while," he said. Chester sat on a bench and stared at the sky, feeling the weight of his pent-up anger. The rustling of the leaves around him provided a slight sense of calm, so he decided to stay there for a bit longer. Suddenly he heard the voice of the boy and assumed they were playing nearby, but he still wanted some peace. It was too noisy. Chester thought, "We need to find somewhere quieter." Meanwhile, the lady and the boy were playing with the magic ball when Lizelle was startled to see the gentleman there. She quickly apologized for disturbing him, explaining that the boy had simply misjudged his strength, which was why the ball had flown all the way over. She couldn't quite understand the look on his face. Chester calmly passed the ball back to her, but Lizelle noticed something disturbing. The same wound he had sustained because of her, and it seemed like it hadn't been treated. This worried her. She asked if he had treated the wound, pointing out that if he hadn't, he could get tetanus. The Duke, seemingly unfazed, didn't understand what that was, especially with how serious and angry she seemed. He waved it off, saying it didn't matter and that he'd take care of it later. But Lizelle insisted he had to treat it in front of her. "If you get sick, I'll feel guilty," she said firmly. The gentleman continued to downplay it, claiming everything was fine. Turning to the maid, Lizelle asked her to leave Lapel with Kay and bring the first aid kit. Chester noticed how quickly she was giving orders, and it seemed like she was trying to hurry him away. He couldn't help but feel like she couldn't stand being around him for even 5 minutes. Lizelle, noticing this, said, "If you think I'm happy to be around you, it's not true. I feel guilty about the scar, not to mention the possibility of you getting ill. I don't want to sit here idly while you risk getting worse." The maid returned with the first aid kit, and Lizelle thanked her before preparing to treat the wound. Chester, observing her, realized she was quite a restless woman. Lizelle, however, was determined that he wouldn't think she was trying to confuse him. Sitting there like a good boy, Chester surprised her, but Lizelle didn't want to be the one to back down. If he didn't want her help, then he'd have to treat it himself. No one needed tetanus here. Meanwhile, Lapel had grown tired of waiting and was ready for bed. Lizelle, turning to him, asked, "Are you ready for bed?" The boy nodded, mentioning he had already put on his pajamas. Lizelle smiled, praising him for his independence. "Then let's wrap ourselves in a blanket and get some rest," she said. Lapel smiled back, wishing her a good night. As she tucked him in, he suddenly asked, "When will we go back?" Lizelle was surprised and asked, "Where do you want to go back to?" He explained he meant his grandparents' house. Lizelle agreed, but only if he promised to eat well, play, and grow strong. She didn't understand why the boy was so sad, and in that moment she wondered if it was because he had bad taste. But the 5-year-old sighed heavily, his small shoulders slumping in front of her. Lizelle didn't want to lie to him, but she couldn't promise when they would return. However, she knew she needed to distract him somehow. "Would you like to take a walk around the city?" she asked. "We can make it a tour, and we'll go to a shop with sweets and toys." The boy's eyes lit up, and he eagerly agreed. They quickly decided to get ready, but first they needed to get Chester's permission. Lizelle went to Chester's office, unsure of how he would respond. She suspected he would forbid the walk, thinking it could be dangerous. Even when they simply walked through the garden, Kay and Tia always accompanied them. Lizelle had grown tired of this constant supervision. She tried to figure out how to ask for time off so they could have some privacy. The butler met her in the corridor and asked if she had business with Chester or if she was afraid of disturbing him. He reassured her that she didn't need to worry. Lizelle told him she would be entering Chester's office, and when the butler said that Chester would never allow it, she decided to press on. She knew he was stubborn, but she couldn't just give up. After all, she had promised the boy. She argued that it was very important for him to explore the world at his age, but Chester insisted that if there was nothing urgent to do, they should stay at home. Lizelle noticed the bandage on his hand and pointed it out, commenting that he had treated it himself. The butler was surprised to see his master wounded. Lizelle noted that Chester had torn the skin off his arm. Chester dismissed it as just a scratch, but he admitted that he was worried about getting tetanus, so he had treated the wound. The butler asked what tetanus was, and Chester, flustered, admitted that he wasn't sure but had treated it anyway. He quickly changed the subject, telling the butler they should focus on more important matters. Lizelle, turning to the butler, asked, "What's typical of our Duke?" She had seen how horrified Chester was when she took his hand, not even knowing if it was due to his nobility or just his pride.